Hey party pooples, I'm Indy Pride, welcome back to Milk and Cookies Total War. We're on Total War Warhammer today playing as Chaos against the Dwarfs of Karak Kadrin, and I felt like bringing a Chaos Dragon because two heads are better than one. Certainly not the most cost-effective selection in terms of mount choices, but they look so cute and cuddly and get so little love, I just had to bring them. Forsaken in my front line will be looking to bestow some hugs on those Ironbreakers and Longbeards. Honestly, not a great choice against the Dawi, but they are relatively cheap and one of the few cost-effective selections in the Chaos arsenal. Exalted Hero on a Manticore will be looking to tie down enemy artillery and range units. And then as my core, I have a bunch of Chaos Warriors with great weapons. These are a must-bring against the Dawi. To counter armor, you bring armor piercing. It's really just that simple. On both flanks, I have Dragon Ogres and Chaos Knights with Lances. They will give me a bunch of charge damage and mobility, and I just love Dragon Ogres. They look so awesome. They're so much fun to use, but you rarely get to see them on large funds without gimping other parts of your army. For the Dwarfs, my opponent has brought Ironbreakers on his flanks and a bunch of Longbeards with great weapons. Good choices. Same principle applies. He's going to need ways to pierce through my heavily armored core troops. And for his lords and heroes, he has Ungrim the Slayer King, a Runesmith to buff up the armor and damage mitigation along his line, and a Thane that will round out his lord and hero choices. And cannons on both flanks are plunking away at my Chaos Knights, making their day very sad. I should have kept them a little bit further back so they weren't quite in range. I did want to make sure I had my Chaos Knights and Dragon Ogres around the flank, and he's doing a good job of making sure to target them because they are one of the most threatening units on the field for his dwarfs. If I get repeated hammer and anvils off, he's going to be having a very bad day. So Forsaken aren't going to do well against Ironbreakers or Longbeards with great weapons from the front. So what I should have done here is chase off those Thunderers in the front. He only has one unit. Make them pull back behind the main line, and then just send my Forsaken off to the side to chill or threaten charges on his artillery until the infantry forces clash. And then I could go for a hammer and anvil, but instead, I'm going to send them right in, and that is not going to go well against the Dwarf artillery. My Manticore, against the Dwarf line. My Manticore is going to take out an artillery piece right away, just exploding a cannon and start tying up that artillery crew, prevent it from firing. And my Chaos Dragon, with the Chaos Lord on top, is going to get straight into a cannon and start ripping that one up as well. So I've been able to tie down both of his cannon units with my two flying units instantly, and he didn't have a lot of Thunders on the field to ward off those flying units. So definitely think he should have had more of those Thunders. That armor piercing can be very devastating when you're getting a full salvo off into a Chaos Dragon or a Manticore unit. And now my Chaos Marauders are going to begin their charge, their suicidal charge into the front, while my Dragon Ogres and Chaos Knights and my Gorebeast Chariot, which I neglected to mention, are going to start causing havoc on the flanks. Now, as you can tell, this is not being played on default funds. I think it's on Ultra, and the reason for that is that I think large funds is just not that much fun when you consider the pricing of units in this game. It's the reason Chaos is kind of terrible, because you can't afford to field anything of value, and armies just look super tiny because a bunch of funds are getting sunk into single entity units like casters and lords. Really good charge there from the Chaos Knights with Lances into the back, and I'm just tying down as much of his back line as possible as my Chaos Warriors with great weapons get into melee. Nice rear charge from the Dragon Ogres. That is going to cause so much devastation, even to Ironbreakers with their high armor. Both of these units are armor-piercing Dragon Ogres and Chaos Warriors with great weapons, so I should be able to rip through those Ironbreakers without too much issue. You can see my Chaos Knights have taken a bunch of damage already, but I am getting some nice hammer and anvils off, and my Chaos Dragon is still causing tons of havoc in the back line. Look at that Gorebeast Chariot go to work, ripping through those Thunderers. I love Chariots in this game. They're just, again, they're too expensive to field on normal funds, which is why I played on Ultra, and I honestly think that the game would benefit from increasing default funds. You're barely fielding armies right now on large funds. They look more like raiding parties. But anyway, Ultra funds allow me to bring the monsters and cavalry and infantry all in the same build, which is pretty shocking, I know. But it makes them, it looks and feels more like a proper Chaos army when you're playing on Ultra, and you can field the cool monsters and units that actually make Warhammer Warhammer. So, at least recently, when I've played, I've much more enjoyed playing on Ultra funds. I just think that it's not so high that you're fielding like ridiculous armies, but it allows you to field a proper army, which I like. Ironbreakers are throwing their blasting charges into the flanks of my cavalry and my Chaos Dragon, and look at that charge. That was gorgeous. Gonna send some heavily armored Dawi flying through the sky. And my opponent has done a good job of using that Rune of Wrath and Ruin on high value targets. He knows those Chaos Knights are a problem, and that's why he had the cannons hurting them from the beginning, and why he has the runes targeting my Chaos Knights. Now, I need to focus that Runesmith down though. I've kind of been ignoring it for too long. Need to get my Exalted Hero or my Chaos Dragon, maybe my Dragon Ogres, in there to tie him up and get him routing so he can no longer buff up the main line. Need to kill him very soon because each time he casts those armor buffs or the damage mitigation, it's making it that much harder for me to cut through all these units in the center. Now my Dragon Ogres are going to come in from the flank and go directly for the Runesmith, and finally going to try to rout him from the field. And they should be able to do relatively well here once you get 12 Dragon Ogres surrounding you and smacking you in the face with those massive weapons. Should be good for me. Now, say what you will about the Chaos Dragon, but my god, is it satisfying to watch this thing go to work. Look at those breath weapons going on. It looks so awesome. I love the Chaos Dragon. It looks so cool. It's not that good. Tail Whip, it's just going to rip through these guys. But the good thing here is, I mean, especially against Dwarfs, especially against something like an Ironbreaker that doesn't have the armor-piercing trait, I could land in the center of those Ironbreakers without too much worry about getting my Chaos Dragon beat up. And then with the fact that the Chaos Dragon itself has armor-piercing, I'm going to be able to do a bunch of damage on that flank, allow my Chaos Warriors to break through and collapse in on the center, and I have the mobility advantage. I don't know, it might have been better for my opponent to bring some Gyrocopters to get some aerial DPS going, but I did have an Exalted Hero and I did have the Chaos Dragon, so it would have been hard for his Gyros to get use. I think Gyros can be very good against Chaos, but you need to make sure you have Thunders to back them up, and he didn't have a lot of them either. So he couldn't really, it was probably good that he didn't bring Gyros in this case, because he didn't have enough Thunders to ward off my Exalted Hero and my Chaos Dragon if I went to chase them down. Now the Gorebeast Chariot is going to come in from the flank and charge in and kind of get stuck and not do a whole lot. They can actually hit the back of a Dragon Ogre. And now my Chaos Dragon is just causing so much havoc. He has no real way to tie me down. He doesn't have the range units that would be great. Like, really the biggest problem with his build is he doesn't have enough Thunders. He really needed that ranged armor piercing to deal with my Flyers and to shoot into the flanks of like a tied down Chaos Knight or Dragon Ogre. Like, Thunders in this build would have been really useful. I think he went a little bit too melee heavy, and now he has no way to deal with my Flyers whatsoever. And my Chaos Dragon and Exalted Hero have done work, and he's had no real way to ward them off. So I'm beating the crap out of his infantry now. I think I am going to rout his Runesmith pretty soon here. He looks relatively low. I'm going to smack him in the face with a massive great weapon on the Dragon Ogre. And I should be able to rout all this stuff in the center, but he does have his cannon coming back. He's actually going to get back on that and start hitting my Chaos Lord, I think, which will be dangerous. Cannons can do a lot of damage to them, obviously. And Ungrim is making his stand over here, surrounded by a bunch of armor-piercing great weapons. But he's Ungrim. He should be able to win that fight. No problem. Every swing of that Axe of Dargo is going to bring down some of my Chaos Warriors. Looks like another buff going on. Actually, no, that's Rune of Wrath and Ruin. Again, that's going to go off on my Dragon Ogres. I think that's actually a pretty good target for them. When you have lower amounts of entities, I think they're on the threshold between being a bad and good target for the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. And I think Dragon Ogres are a good target for it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the lower amount of entities up to a certain point in a unit, the better it is to use Rune of Wrath and Ruin on them. So, oh my god, look at that charge from the Gorebeast Chariot. Gonna rip through that cannon crew and then carry on. Actually, I think it ripped through a Ironbreaker unit and then carried on into an artillery crew. And like, this is why I love playing Chaos on larger funds, because you can afford to field these things that make Chaos chaos. You like watching a Gorebeast Chariot do that is so cool. It's so much fun to use those units, and you just cannot ever afford them on large funds without just completely gimping your army and only having monsters. So great charge there from the Gorebeast Chariot, gonna rip through stuff. And now I'm beating up on the Thane. You can see the Master Engineer, or not Master Engineer, the Runesmith in the back did rout, but he's come back, and I basically have the game in the bag at this point. Dragon Ogre gonna charge uphill directly into the face of withering cannon fire, but the charge should send them running for the hills for good. So awesome. And yeah, they're gonna break and presumably shatter, and that will allow me to finally silence those guns and prevent them from shooting into my flank. And now my Chaos Dragon is going to look for the Runesmith. You can see I just clicked an attack order on them, and this Runesmith is about to have a very bad day. You've got a monster that big bearing down on you. I think only Ungrim would willingly want to take this fight head on. And he's on the other side of the battlefield right now. So I'm just going to kind of stomp him into the ground. You can see that the Tzeentch tentacles rising from the ground. My Tzeentch flyer should have a good time munching on this guy. And we'll put it into slow-mo here in a second, because there's going to be a very satisfying kill animation as the Chaos Dragon bites down. And there goes your head, son. Ooh, that is so brutal. That is so brutal. Runesmith gonna get his head bitten off by a massive Tzeentch flyer, and that will be the end of his miserable existence. So, rest in pieces. You are dead, and that is going to pretty much signal the end of the battle. Ungrim will make his last stand over on the other side. I think I'm gonna send my Chaos Dragon over there to finish him off. And I was actually having this discussion over on Reddit. I have never actually seen a decapitation, dismemberment, disembowel. I've never seen any of those crazy bloody kill animations on a legendary lord. I think it might be coded in the game that something like Karl Franz or Thorgrim or Ungrim can't actually get dismembered, which would make sense because they are legendary lords. You don't really want to see Karl Franz get his head chopped off. I mean, I kind of do, but I don't know if it's possible. I've seen them get kill animations done on them, right? Like, I've seen Ungrim get picked up and slammed into the ground by a troll, but I never saw the end of that animation because he's usually the last one to die. And I don't think they can actually get cut apart, but if someone's ever seen a legendary lord get decapitated, dismembered, I'd love to know. I know regular lords can and regular heroes can, but I don't think legendary lords can. Looking at the kills, you can see my Gorebeast Chariot did work, my Dragon Ogres did work, Chaos Knights did well, Chaos Dragon did well, and I think the Dwarf build could have used a bit more finicking with, but good game to him. Hope you guys enjoyed.